Hey everybody, welcome to another Rackspace Cloud Office Hours Hangout. My name is Alan Bush and we're broadcasting live from the Castle, Rackspace's headquarters here in San Antonio, Texas. I got a real fun show for everybody today. We are going to be talking a little bit about cloud architecture trends, and we've got a great panel to talk to us about that. So I'm going to start introducing everybody here. Let's start with our co-host this week. Our normal co-host Drew Cox is on an airplane somewhere between San Francisco and here, and filling in for us is the ever capable Bill Hertzing. Thanks for joining us again, Bill. Oh, Bill's muted again. Uh-oh. All right. Well, all right, Bill. We'll let you get that figured out here, and we'll go on and introduce our next guest panelist here, Ryan Walker. Ryan, you are a 5-year racker that you're working on the DevOps team, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Been working on the DevOps automation team for about a year now. So,
yeah, absolutely. That's great. And you started off in Managed Cloud. You and BK actually were some of the very first support rackers on our Managed Cloud product, right?
Yeah, that's correct. BK went off and started that whole thing, and I chased after them.
Yep, absolutely. So we've already talked about him a little bit. Let's bring him in and introduce him. BK Box, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us.
Sure, no problem. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I've been here for about 7 years or so, and like Ryan said, I came over to the cloud and helped start Managed Cloud, and just working on DevOps, working on all kinds of automation, and really loving it.
Absolutely, and we're really glad that you guys could be here to join us because you wrote maybe even 6 months ago now wrote a really great white paper on how to, or actually on some of the bigger trends in application architecture, cloud application architecture specifically, and we wanted to have you on to discuss that. I think it was really well written and explained a lot of stuff. So we're really glad to have you on, and we'll get in here and talk about this. Hey, look, Bill's back. Bill,
hey, I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Hey, no worries, no worries. Well, Bill, it's great to have you on. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm sitting here in Goonies, so I got Chuck behind me, so we're
well, you definitely have the award for the best location there. I've just got the world's most boring whiteboard. I'm going to draw on it next time if I can. Well, great to have you guys here. Let's go ahead and talk about a little bit of cloud news today. I just wanted to mention one thing that I thought was really neat that I had a chance to participate in a little bit, and that was the TechStars Cloud kickoff. And the latest TechStars Cloud class just was announced earlier this week. They actually got to stop by the castle here. They are headquartered at Geekdom down here in downtown San Antonio, which is kind of partnered with Rackspace. And I got to meet some of them. They are in an accelerator, and there's a lot of really interesting applications and ideas that are out there. And I think that it's going to be nice to watch them and see what happens on I guess May, I believe, is whenever they get to present their demo products. So lots of really cool products out there, and just wanted to say welcome to San Antonio to all of those entrepreneurs who are going to be here for the next couple of months. Bill, you had something as well that you wanted to mention too, right? Bill, oh no, Bill, your microphone hates us today. Oh, all right. Let's see if we can just use the standard mic there and see if that works for now, and then we'll try to figure out the rest of it. Yeah. Oh, that's rough. BK, Ryan, have you guys seen anything lately that you want to share with everybody else?
I think the thing that I am excited about just in my everyday life now are the developments with CoreOS. They've recently announced that they're starting to ship Flannel with their latest releases of CoreOS. I'm not sure if it's all the way into stable yet, but it could just be in their alpha or beta channels. But Flannel is a way of doing networking across multiple hosts virtually using etcd. So it allows you to create pretty much like a seamless network for, in the case, my usage for it would be for Docker across a cluster of CoreOS hosts. So I'm really excited about that announcement and to see that project develop more.
Well, yeah, same here. I mean, just a lot of the a lot of containerization is very, very interesting. You know, Ryan mentioned earlier that he followed me over for the cloud and managed cloud stuff. But here lately, I've pretty much been following him. So whatever he's getting into, that's pretty much what I'm getting into.
Well, I can think of a lot worse people to follow, so you guys are in good company following each other around. Well, I think we'll talk a little bit more about Docker and CoreOS here as part of our discussion. But yeah, those are definitely some things to be excited about. Yeah, I'm really excited about CoreOS, especially now that we can that we've started using it a little bit more with our on-metal servers, and you know, it's a really exciting way to approach cloud architecture. Hey, Bill.
I'll keep trying.
I keep trying. Yeah, absolutely. So you're going to talk a little bit about some of Microsoft's local initiatives.
Absolutely. So one of the things that caught my eye this week was Microsoft CityNext. They are a local initiative where they're working with an organization called, let me find my notes here, they're called 100resilientcities.org. And what they're doing is working with cities and implementing solutions by helping them address the challenges regarding cyber and physical basically cyber security, but also with physical and resource vulnerabilities. So, for example, what cities that want to push Wi-Fi to public areas, how do you protect that? And so Microsoft has the list of, they're coming in with basically their best practices and also helping cities with trying to develop applications for residents. Maybe they want to set up a residence club so that you can find out what's happening locally in your area, and maybe if you're looking for scholarship information or even just something for local activities for your kids on the weekends, it'd be a place for them to you could reference it and just kind of find out what's going on. So 100resilientcities.org, they have they're going in to just help communities with health and well-being, economy, leadership and strategy, that kind of stuff. So Microsoft is throwing their hat into that to kind of help the community at large.
Great, that's good. That's definitely something that I know, especially the smaller towns, probably need a lot of help with, and I'm glad to see that they are applying their resources that way. That'll be good. Really excited to see how that works out.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump in. I had before we start talking about the actual topic today, let me invite everybody that's watching to participate with us. We want this to be interactive. So if you're watching, there's a couple of different ways that you can actually join in on the conversation, and one of those ways is through using the Q&A app within the Hangout itself. So if you, when you're in the Hangout, there's an opportunity to ask some questions. Go ahead and ask some questions. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd be happy to answer them on the air here. If you have a question about architecture trends, that's absolutely something that we can answer. Also, if you are on Twitter, we can, if you're watching on YouTube and want to use Twitter to comment at us, use the hashtag CloudQA. Or if you are on YouTube, just go ahead and drop a comment right there in the comments on YouTube, and we'll answer your questions right there. So yeah, go ahead and hit us up that way, and we're more than happy to answer your questions. But I guess right now it's time to get in and talk about our main topic for today, and that is cloud application architecture trends. So, I mentioned it at the top of the show. Ryan and BK, and then Caleb Groom, who also is one of the pioneers of managed cloud here at Rackspace. You guys wrote a white paper a few months ago about application architecture trends, and you identified four different trends, and that's definitely what we're going to talk about today. But real quick, while we're before we get into the meat of the discussion, let's talk a little bit about the paper itself and what prompted the paper and what kind of response you've gotten so far from it.
So the response has been really good. We've gotten a lot of people looking at it, and I think that's great. Kind of what prompted it is we tend to always find ourselves sort of on the cutting edge of things, and in our own personal lives, and we sometimes don't sit back and look at what everybody else is doing and where they should be going and where we would like to see people. And so we started looking at what are people doing? What do we see coming up in the next year as far as how people should be managing their environments and using these types of resources.
Great. BK, looks like you had something to add?
Yeah, I was just looking for the mute button. But yeah, just more of a lot of things that are coming out, and it's really actually kind of interesting. When we wrote that white paper, a lot of these things were still fairly new, and it's kind of interesting to see as we begin this year, a lot of the things are actually going that direction and becoming more and more prominent. So it's just really kind of exciting to see that we were getting into these things and we felt like those were the trends, and things are actually starting to shape that way. It's like saying that you predicted the future, but you didn't really. We just kind of we started using those things, and we felt really comfortable with those, and we felt like that's the way to do things. And other people are starting to agree, and it's really exciting.
That's good. It's good. I mean, you actually, in your position, have the opportunity to kind of shape that future. So that's nice to see that, as you use them and learn the ways to use some of these same trends, that you're able to kind of improve your odds on predicting the future there. So
I guess that's true.
Yeah, yeah. That's not cheating. That's just doing your job well.
Self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So, well, let's talk about that first one that you mentioned there. That first item was controlling hardware through code. And so this is talking about using APIs to build out more and more of your actual application infrastructure, almost in a self-aware way.
Yeah, I think this is something that we've talked about for a long time. People have been, this isn't something that's new, but I think that why this belongs here is because we're starting to see this being enabled for people in a way that it hasn't been easy to do before. So it used to be that you would probably have to roll a lot of your own applications to kind of control all this stuff and achieve this goal. But now when you look at when you look at things like Rackspace orchestration and with OpenStack Heat, people are much more able to do things like deploy an entire environment for their application and for the supporting applications and things like that with one single API call. And that's when we start getting into this ability for almost starting to break down the barriers of being able to have an application that can talk to its environment better and say, hey, I'm a web service and I just came online. Go give me access to that database server, and it does that through an API. Or hey, I'm a web application. I need to be added into a load balancer. So let me go and do that instead of having to have someone doing that manually. Many years ago, you would create a server yourself, and that might be an API call, and then you would go and you would create a database server, and that might be another API call, et cetera, et cetera. And then somebody was like, man, I really hate running all of these things by hand. I'll write a script that does it all because that's what we always do. And then I don't think that guy said it at the time, but they sort of started controlling their hardware through code. And then we've evolved to the point where now you can use something like OpenStack Heat, which is what Rackspace deployments or Rackspace orchestration is based on, which is a whole lot of controlling hardware as code to do very large deployments for your application and supporting services.
Yeah, I think a lot of it kind of boils down to, I'll admit, I came from a sysadmin background. I sit in a chair all day long. I'm pretty lazy. So it came from we need to create a new application, new environment for a new application, right? So let's go ask for a server. Let's go ask for a couple of servers. Cool. I can sit back and wait. That guy's putting the DevOps, the DC Ops guy's putting that together. We got to wait for him to wire it up, all this kind of stuff. Oh, cool. It's my turn. Yeah, let's just get on there. Let's do some work. Let's bang it all out. And now we're to the point where we just click a button. Boom, we have a server that's like, well, I got a lot of stuff to do. Man, I've got so much work to do. Let's make it easier so I can be lazy again.
What is the just a couple of questions? So basically, what's the lowest common denominator? I'm an IT manager, and I want to tell my team to go and find out where to start doing that, helping them not be lazy, but actually be so they can focus more on developing the application, not so much on the business. Where should they start looking?
Well, I've said it a couple of times, but I think that there's a lot of power through orchestration services, because I think that as an IT manager, investing resources in developing templates to use those types of services will save you a lot of money and time in the long run. So I run lots of different product services, and the way that I've moved to doing all of those things is I want to be able to make one API call, and when that's done, I have a whole new cluster. I don't want to have to babysit it. I don't want to have to do any of those things, and I achieve that through something like Heat. I think that's probably where somebody would want to go and look into how to do that. It's very simple. And easy to do, and we have ways of lots of examples and stuff like that. But right now for some of the services that we manage, we run one API call and tell it how many nodes we want, and it goes and configures all the services on that node, deploys all of the servers, deploys load balancers. They all figure out who they need to talk to. And then even starts configuring on the network side, since now we're starting to see a lot more software-defined networking and being able to control that layer through code as well, which I think was something that some people have been doing for a long time, but it's one of the newer things that I think has become a lot more mature than it used to be. And so now we've even got to the point where with Rackspace's Rack Connect product, we can start controlling how we interact with physical firewalls through making API calls as well, which has been a pretty big barrier in the past. So yeah, for our environment, we can do all of that in one Heat template, which is not something easily done just 6 months ago, really.
Yeah, and certainly I think the best place to start is like Ryan said, looking at something like Heat. Go looking at documentation and start out with like the smallest pieces that you can do, like building out a compute resource or whatever it might be, and just injecting that to the API, and just going from there and adding a little at a time. And then you can even go so far as to go to other services or other offerings like Chef Metal or Terraform or these kind of applications, and look at the way that they implement them as well. Because then you start to contrast and compare and that kind of thing, and you can really kind of understand the goal a lot of these infrastructure automation systems are being built for.
Well, that's some good advice, I think, to start off small and to just start with one or two pieces of your application and start building from there. That's some good advice. And I want to go back to something, Ryan, that you said just at the beginning. There was that it's something that pays off in the long run, and I think that's one of the more business-focused trends that we've commented on here before, is that this is really a long-term play. It's not necessarily something that you'll see benefits from, necessarily big benefits from right away. In fact, a lot of times to build and develop the templates that you need to automate, you actually have to shift some of those resources up front and shift your time, which is one of your most valuable resources, up front to actually building that out. And so you do have to take a while to do that, but once that's done, then you can sit back and the sysadmins can go back to being lazy and just watching things run. So I think that's a really good point to make there.
Yeah, it really goes back to that webcomic. I think it's XKCD, where it talks about the amount of work over time increases, but for
Right.
sysadmin, it's very high work at the beginning, and then it drops off because it's all automated.
That's a good one.
The second trend you mentioned in the document was implementing services. So let's chat a little bit about that. In there you mentioned service-oriented architecture. When I read through it, it made so much sense, but it's not something that's just obvious in the beginning. Talk a little bit on that.
Yeah, so SOA is definitely not something new at all. There have been people who have been doing this for many years now. But I don't think it's something that we can stress enough to people trying to design applications and services. Just as a general overview, service-oriented architecture and the even bigger focus on microservices now is an ideology of everything should have. It sort of takes the old Unix approach of everything has a very specific purpose, and it's really good at that purpose, but it doesn't really break out of that box. So, like, if you're a project manager, it's that thing ever has scope creep. So take, for example, if you're designing an application and you need some sort of authentication for users, you need something. It needs to manage users. It needs to do some sort of really cool thing for its customer, and that's it. You would probably, instead of making one application that did all of those things, you would probably end up making at least 3, maybe more, small services that did each one of those things. So you would have a small service that does your authentication piece, and that's all it does. And all of your other services talk to it through an API. And then you may have another small service that manages your users. And all it does is know who the users are and information about users, and that's it. It doesn't care about anything else, but that's it. Just users. And you can even break that down and be even more specific with how that works. And then you may have, I'm trying to think of some sort of service that you might have, but you have a service that takes orders, right? So then you have another service that is the front end that talks to the back end, which collects the data and puts it in a database, and that, et cetera, et cetera. So all of those things are completely independent. It allows that, and so that allows you lots of different various things. There's the high availability standpoint of that, in that the idea is you could hopefully make each one of those things highly available on its own, instead of having to make these big monolithic services kind of replicate all of that work all over the place. And then you can also add a little bit more security into that whole situation. So your auth system doesn't probably need to talk to users over the internet. It just needs to talk to maybe your front end that's trying to figure out, is this person allowed in or not, right? So you can lock that down separately. It's also a different code base. So if somebody finds an exploit in your front end code or in your API code, that doesn't necessarily mean that then they're going to be able to break your auth system or break into the auth system and get to that data. So it allows some of this segregation. So like I said, lots of people have been doing this for a long time, but more and more people are trying to migrate to that philosophy. More people that haven't been doing it are starting to migrate that. We're seeing a lot more enterprise-type customers looking at those types of solutions for things for those primary benefits.
Yeah, I think the other benefits that you get out of that, it really lends itself to having the ability to track down problems, because it's going to be very specific as to which area it's probably failing in. That also boils down to easy testability as well, because if you have a small function of the application as a whole, as a small service, you have a very distinct input and output, and you can test that very easily and very consistently. And in the same manner, you can see exactly what you're sending into that application and what you're expecting out. So if you have an issue somewhere along the line, you can track that and try each individual piece individually until you find that exact spot where it's failing on you. I think it also allows you to scale a lot easier too, and individual bottlenecks that may show up.
Does it improve delivery times? I mean, does it help me get different parts of my application to market faster if I'm an IT manager?
Yeah, I think it definitely can, especially as you look at microservices being more reusable as well. So, if you have a delivery for one app that does almost the same exact thing as another app, instead of having to rewrite every single piece of that code, or not rewrite, but reship all of that stuff, you can start introducing smaller applications that fulfill that one function, right? So maybe you have a smaller or another front end service that still uses the other systems, but provides slightly different functionality for that new customer, and you have a smaller additional API service. It can still reuse the other existing microservices, but it's just performing its small function for that one task.
What's a good balance for using this tool? Like, is there such thing as too much? Could you decouple everything? I mean,
yeah, absolutely, right. You can always take anything too far. I think there are people out there who could break everything down into the littlest thing, and you may start talking about like network latency. If every single service has to make an API call, like what's the trade-off in those things, etc. You may find that certain things work better if they live natively with the thing that they have to talk to all the time, etc. So yeah, sure, you could take it too far. I mean, I could also eat too much chocolate. So.
Right. Okay.
I don't think so.
No, that's a very interesting point. One thing that I have a question about is like how has more of a reliance on open source helped out with using microservices? You see a lot of people that are using like reusing microservices, forking a project and making it. You kind of mentioned something similar to that. You see people mostly building their own microservices or working from other microservices.
I think with containers, it's made it a lot easier to share those microservices. Not to say that it hasn't been done in the past. It's just a lot easier because you're able to say, install the application, set it up, and then you just go run it. There's no need to worry about getting dependencies, getting those installed, getting environment variables set up correctly, like all these intricacies that you need to worry about getting the application up and running. And with containers, you can just start it up. So I think it's happening a lot more frequently, and it's a lot easier now with containers.
Yeah, and I think dividing up those roles as well makes it easier for people to open source that type of thing. So if you have so for example, I wanted to run an OAuth proxy in front of a
like a web app or something?
A service, and I wanted to use GitHub OAuth, and it didn't natively support it. I found some guy who wrote a Node.js-based OAuth proxy, because there's like a billion of them, and it was just real small, maybe a couple, I don't know, maybe 100 lines of code, and it did that one service really well, and I was able to take it, plug it in, and use it. And that was part of a larger project that company was doing, and they were using this particular thing for that one purpose. Roll all of that into one monolithic code set. They probably never would have been able to open source that little piece of code. It would have been part of something that was proprietary. It wouldn't have given them as much presence, in the open source community. And then I would have cried because I would have had to go write that myself. So.
Well, we're glad that you didn't have to cry about that, at least. Cool. So, BK, you mentioned something just a minute ago about containers, and that actually happens to be the third thing that
Hey.
that we were going to talk about today. So let's talk a little bit about containers. It's definitely a topic that we talked about before. I think that just about every tech presentation in 2014 had a requirement to include the word Docker in it somewhere. So let's make sure that this one, to start off 2015, includes the word Docker. So let's talk about Docker and other containers that are out there. I know that Rocket is getting to be a big one as well.
Yeah, I'm sure there are people out there who are counting the number of times we say Docker.
It's a drinking game on this show.
Exactly.
I've learned.
Yeah, Docker. Go ahead, Ryan. I'll let you kick this one off.
Okay. Yeah, I speaking of a drinking game, I've been completely drunk on Docker for a while. Several months now, I've been completely into that entire world. We decided to move all the applications that our team manages to Docker applications and to use CoreOS with them. So I've spent a lot of time with it, and I feel like so containerization is another one of those things that it's actually been around for a really long time. Big, large-scale companies, internet companies have been using it for a long time in some way or another. You know, Yahoo has had their own version of it. Google has had their own kind of version of it, etc. But in 2014 it became much more popular because of Docker coming in and really lowering the barrier of entry to being able to do that. So I feel like as that continues to pick up traction, even if there's a lot of competing things like Rocket and other things, and maybe, you know, who knows, at the end of the day, you know, we may all invest in something completely different from Docker at some point. But I think what it's happened is it's really thinking about the benefits of running applications in a containerized environment.
Yeah, I think we've mentioned many of the bullet points so far. I mean, the biggest one for me is the ability to set up a container and have it ready to go no matter where I'm at. I don't have to worry about dependencies. I don't have to worry about versions or vulnerabilities in libraries or anything like that may be on the host OS. It's all living in the container. You just start it up and go. And speaking of Go, I think that it makes the awesome ability to have very, very small containers and very, very small applications with statically compiled binaries, like Go can do. I mean, you can do it with other languages, but Go just makes it a lot easier to handle and to get into.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, so BK mentioned Go, which I think is also one of the really big things in that container world, is being able to have these very small containers. So right now, if you really want to like put a big old Python application in a container, you're going to end up with a pretty big container. And that's how a lot of people are doing things. I mean, you have an apt-get command, or whatever you're using, that it's going to install like 100 packages, and there's going to be a bunch of stuff on there, right? And there's some tricks, but that's the way a lot of people are doing it right now. The real cool stuff is when you start looking at people who are using Go, or something like Twitter has something for Python called PEX, which allows you to have these statically linked binary applications inside a small container that you can deploy out anywhere in whatever scale you want, easily pop out another one whenever you need it. I think that's the really exciting part. I'm not sure if we'll get to see that in this year. I think that's still pretty cutting edge, but I'm really excited to see where it goes.
I was talking to a lot of people at Solve this past year in New York City, and Docker gave a presentation. And one of the things that I tried to stress with people who didn't really understand was that it's really an easy technology to learn. I mean, I'm a Windows guy, and I was able to watch a YouTube video and get WordPress in a Docker container, and then just kind of play with it. And then when I didn't like it, I could just delete it and re-kick it a new container, and I had reset my entire configuration. So it's really easy. I found it very easy to get up and running with just a little bit of knowledge.
Well, I think we found the new slogan for Docker, which is so easy even a Windows guy can do it. So.
There you go. Right. Exactly.
No, that's good. Hey, so we found we have a question from one of our viewers, and I want to take this time to mention anybody else that's watching right now. If you want to go ahead and ask any questions, if you have questions, let us know. You can use the Q&A app right there in the Hangouts and get your question here. So here's a question from Garrett, and he asks, what is the most interesting application of Docker that you've heard of?
Stumped us.
They're thinking really hard here.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are way cooler ones out there, so I'm just going to preface with that. But I know that Mailgun is using Docker at a pretty large scale, and they have been doing some cool things with it with a service that they're creating called Vulkan D, which is a load balancing service, and that they're doing with Vulkan. And the way it interacts with Docker, I thought has been really cool. The other thing I wanted to point out was the IPython notebook viewer has moved to a Docker system. It's being headed up by Kyle Kelly, who is also a Racker, and it does some really cool stuff. With being able to generate, so for people who don't know, IPython Notebook is this giant, very heavy interactive Python system that you can use right in your web browser. It's used by a lot of scientists and really smart people, and it's normally kind of a pain to like get it running as a service for people to use well. Well, Kyle's system allows you to hit a URL which just launches a Docker container with IPython Notebook in it within like 1 second, and then redirects you to the URL for that container. And you can just keep, don't do this, but you can just keep refreshing the page and just keep getting new containers over and over again. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I think that's crazy impressive, and exploring that more, I think, is amazing.
Yeah, and Rackspace is actually hosting a demo of this with Nature, the Nature Journal, and here's Tyler's got a picture of it up here, sharing it, and it looks like this is, I believe this is the same technology, right, where it's launched a new instance of Docker at the initial page request, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what that's using.
Great.
Yeah, I know another similar service that's built on top of Docker, kind of a similar idea, but I haven't been there in a while, so I'm not totally sure how they've implemented it these days, but it was coding.com, and coding with a K. A very interesting idea of collaborating on code together. So basically you could point your, you could log in and point your account to GitHub and have a certain repo that you wanted to collaborate on, and then share that with others. And then you could say start collaborating, and it would immediately start up a Docker container and clone that down. You can start editing there. It opens up like a proxy so that you could browse to a certain IP address at a certain port. If you were building, like, say, a Rails app or a Django app or whatever you might be building, and just have it there immediately. And everyone can log into the same container and code together, test things out, reload things. Again, just very quick and very awesome on the fly.
Great. Those are some good examples there. Ryan, you mentioned that that Mailgun is using Docker quite a bit. I think that the corporate folklore there is that before Rackspace acquired Mailgun, that Mailgun and Docker shared some space together. I believe they're neighbors, I think, is the folklore there. I don't know how true that is, but that's something that I've heard, and I'm more than happy to spread that rumor. And in answer to Garrett's question, one thing that I've actually been able to use Docker for a couple of different things. I mean, there's so many applications that are now able to be deployed just using Docker containers, right? So everything gets packaged together. But one of them that I'm using is called Drone, drone.io, and it's actually a continuous integration and continuous deployment tool, and I actually use it to look at a GitHub repository where I keep my personal blog, and every time I release a new blog, every time I commit, it actually sends a webhook to it sends a webhook to Drone, and then Drone pulls in that repository that I've told it to watch, and then it will use a Docker container that has, in my instance, I use the Hugo static blog generator. It'll take all of the markdown files I've had, and then it'll go ahead and recreate all of those as static HTML and upload to Cloud Files, and that all gets done in about 2 minutes or so of me actually committing the blog post. So that's just a really simple way to do it. One of our mutual colleagues, Justin Phelps, got me set up on that, and it's been working for me really well ever since.
Yeah, I love Drone.io. Yeah, we've actually they work out of, or used to at least work out of Geekdom in San Francisco, which is where our San Francisco office is as well. So yeah, there's a lot of intermingling in the Docker Rackspace community apparently.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Garrett, for your question. That was a great one. Anybody else has questions? We're definitely more than happy to answer them here. So go ahead and keep on asking. All right.
So the final topic covered in your white paper, guys, was service discovery. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll start because BK's missing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so service discovery, there's been a lot of talk about that in 2014. Again, it's not a brand new thing, so that I think that's what's really cool about these things is we're starting to actually see some of these mature. But service discovery is the idea of my application doesn't have to know from the very beginning where every single thing is, and I don't have to tell it where everything is. It'll go figure it out some way. And there's been people that have been doing this. Zookeeper has been a popular way of doing this in the past, but Zookeeper is sort of it was good at what it did, but it was kind of a pain to manage. It's a big Java application. So in 2014, we saw a lot of things come out. I know Mitch from the Vagrant fame. They have some technology that's doing service discovery, and for me the big thing has been etcd, and looking at how I can use that with things like confd, so that when I create systems, they publish themselves and say, hey, I'm a web service, and another system publishes itself and says, hey, I'm a load balancing service, and then my load balancing service says, hey, where's all the web services, and looks them up and adds them into its configuration. So I never have to manage any of that itself. I just create a new service and everything hooks itself up. I think that's the real idea of it. There was a lot of talk about smart stack, and that being the way that was being used for service discovery. It was brilliant. But what I thought was really cool is by the end of 2014, we started to see newer technologies that came out that I thought were even better than Smart Stack. So I'm really looking forward to what we see in 2015 with all of that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about service discovery. I mean, that's kind of like the ideal situation where you don't have to pre-code all of those, whatever the IP address of the service is. You might know that you have 5 web nodes to start off with, but you don't know what you're going to end up with. You don't know what those IP addresses are going to be, and being able to figure that out on the fly is just beautiful. And it'll really help to make sure that that web applications continue to grow and scale, and you don't have to, again, you don't have to have as much manual intervention, and that's always a great thing. So what are some of the ways that actually is implemented? I mean, how do you make sure that only the right the right nodes come up and identify themselves as the correct services?
Yeah, yeah, you certainly don't want that to get miswired. in our case with etcd, we're using confd to it gathers data from etcd, and then in our case it's generating HA proxy templates, because even though we're trying to be in the new age, we're still using HA proxy because it works. We can do that through doing essentially namespacing. I mean, because most of these service discovery systems, at the very heart of them, it's just a key value store. So that's kind of also the brilliance of it, is it's not complicated necessarily. It doesn't have to be. So if you looked at the old way of doing it with Zookeeper, and that's what SmartStack is using as well. I mean, Zookeeper is just a key value store with some extras, right? But that's what it boils down to. And essentially that's what etcd is as well. But we're just making sure it's highly available. And so when we set things up, I want to make sure that HA proxy is going to route traffic for this application based on what I've put into those namespace those things in etcd. I know Console has some ways of doing it, and it's using DNS for a lot of its for how it does things. I have not used Console enough to say anything smart about how it might work that way. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that.
No, I would say that I haven't really had a chance to dig into a lot of these technologies. I mean, I've read about all of them, but I haven't had a chance to play with a lot to really figure out exactly what's going on.
If I'm an IT manager, what point should I consider implementing this technology? Is it early on when as my infrastructure is starting to grow, or is there a certain point that it becomes beneficial?
Yeah, I would say if it were me, I would try to implement it as soon as I could. I think that there's a big cost in trying to change directions. It's a certain amount of so I think we've talked about technical debt a lot in the terms of code when you're writing things, and okay, well, I'm going to do it this way, but it's not really the right way, but I'll clean it up later, and we'll just attribute that to technical debt. Well, now we're getting to the point where you can get technical debt for all of your infrastructure as well, and I think that's one of those cases where the more and more you start relying on the way you don't necessarily want to be doing it 6 months from now, the more likely it is that you're still going to be doing it the wrong way 6 months from now. The Titanic is really hard to turn around, and so it could take a while. And so if you're wildly successful, which everyone hopes they are, it's going to be harder and harder to find time to do it the way that you really wanted to. So I would do it as early as you could, assuming that the technology, a lot of this stuff is newer, but assuming the technology can do what you want it to do. We've certainly looked at things and said, man, I really want to use that. So take Flannel, for example. I really wanted to use Flannel several months ago, and I thought that was the right way to do it. But I did have to say, you know what, I think that's one of those things where I'm going to have to implement later, just because it was a little too new at the time. There were some caveats to implementing it in our infrastructure, and I was okay with that, and I had to make some sacrifices. But for the most part, I think you should try to do it as early as possible, assuming that it can fit your needs.
Great. Yeah, I think that is good advice. I mean, like you said, technical debt is everywhere, and the Titanic is very difficult to turn around, as they found out in the worst way possible. All right. Well, I guess we can go ahead and kind of wrap it up. Let's go ahead and review those 4 things that you mentioned before as big trends here in cloud application architecture. And the first thing that we talked about here, we talked about controlling your hardware through code, using APIs to actually build out your infrastructure. When we talked about using services instead of a monolithic application, making sure that application is broken out into all of the different services. We talked about using containers to architect and to ship code efficiently, and then we also talked about using service discovery, which is really one of the newer things that's got us all excited. So those are those 4 that you outlined. There is a white paper that can be downloaded. We have it in our Knowledge Center, and you can download that and use it and learn from it there. Let's see. Yeah. So yeah, download that white paper. Check it out. BK and Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. I'll let you get out of here as quickly as you can. BK's battery is is rapidly depleting, so we'll go ahead and end it just a couple minutes before the hour here. But I really want to thank you guys for first of all writing this great article and then coming on to share with us about that. If you've been watching and want to learn more about this, figure out how you can use this in your applications, give us a call at Rackspace. This is what we do. This is what we're here for, and we'll make sure that we get you set up with the best way to do that for your specific needs.
I do have one more thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like we're letting someone down by not acknowledging that it wasn't entirely myself, Caleb, and Ryan. Garrett Heath did tons of work in putting it together. And editing it and get it posted and getting it out there, and yes, he did an amazing job of helping us with that white paper.
Yeah, Garrett absolutely does a lot of great stuff with us getting white papers out, among other things. He'd be the last one to toot his own horn, so definitely worth mentioning Garrett there.
He's big behind the scenes, does a lot of stuff.
Absolutely. If you're in San Antonio, check him out next weekend at WordCamp San Antonio. All right, so. I think that's about it. Oh, I did want to mention one other thing. So at Rackspace, we recently announced that we're going to need to move all of our existing customers that are currently on our very first generation of cloud servers, our old SliceHost customers. We need to move them over to our next generation of servers. So we've started a project to do that. Yesterday, I hosted a special hangout with some of the project managers and the actual support personnel that are undertaking this task. We answered almost 20 questions from customers that they had. So there's a lot of information there. You can go ahead and check that out if you have any questions. If you have a first generation cloud server, you will be impacted by this. So I highly recommend checking it out and reviewing that. And if you still have questions, over at our community, community.rackspace.com, we are monitoring that from now until the end of the year when all these migrations are over, and we're more than happy to answer your questions there. So check that out. And you can check out all the other shows that we do here. We do this every week at 1 o'clock on Thursday. And we'll be back next week with another great show. Bill, thank you very much for hosting with us 2 weeks in a row. Really appreciate it.
So sorry about all the technical issues, but
hey, we got them straightened out though.
Yeah,
so we made it. BK and Ryan, thanks for joining us, and we'll see everybody next week. Take it easy.
All right, bye-bye.